Vladimir Putin has a new warning for the United States after President Biden authorized Ukraine to use long-range missiles supplied by the U.S. to strike inside Russia. Chief Foreign Correspondent Ian Pennell starts us off from Ukraine. Good morning, Ian.
Yeah, good morning, George. Nuclear saber rattling from the Kremlin this morning, with Vladimir Putin appearing to threaten to use nuclear weapons if Ukraine fires American-made missiles into Russia. The Kremlin saying the doctrine was updated in response to what it calls the new situation. The new Russian policy essentially authorizes the use of nuclear weapons in response to what it calls, quotes, critical threats of aggression using conventional weapons. Now remember, President Biden lifting restrictions on the attack and ballistic missiles, which are, of course, conventional weapons, essentially allowing them to be fired into Russia. Putin has made nuclear threats before that have proved to be hollow. A senior Ukrainian military source telling me this is blackmail, but also warning nuclear weapons are a Pandora's box that shouldn't be opened. This move likely aimed as much at President-elect Trump, who's promising to end the war when he takes office, but it'll make that all the harder. Meanwhile, Russia again escalating attacks inside Ukraine, striking an apartment block in the north, killing 9, including a child. And for all the talk of peace plans, Ukraine today marking 1,000 days of Russia's devastating war with no end in sight. And just one final bit of breaking news, we're hearing that the Russians are reporting that Ukraine has now used these attack and ballistic missiles. More on that later.
Yeah, it looks like an escalation is coming. Okay, Ian, thanks very much.
То, что атакам сегодня ночью по Брянской области использовался неоднократно, это, конечно, сигнал о том, что они хотят эскалацию. И без американцев использовать эти ракеты высокотехнологичные, Путин об этом многократно говорил, невозможно.
Good evening, Patriots, and welcome to another edition of the Douglas Ducote Show. You had many places you could be tonight. You chose to be here with me, and for that, I am forever grateful. Thank you very, very much. Over the past 48 hours, I have assembled 8 different topics to discuss tonight, all of which are now going to be put on hold so that I can discuss one topic. And that is how the Biden-Harris administration is sending us into possibly a nuclear Armageddon. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would rather see a nuclear Armageddon than Donald J. Trump back in the White House. That's how I view this. Every red line that Russia has drawn, this current administration has crossed it. Crossed their T's, dotted their I's, and laughed in the face of Vladimir Putin, who, in my personal opinion, is a little off, to say the least. Kind of like Joe Biden. Except I believe Putin is crazy and Joe Biden is mentally unstable because of Alzheimer's or something that's happened to him. He's just not all there. Which begs to differ, who is running the country? Was it Joe Biden's decision to allow Ukraine to fire long-range U.S. missiles into Russia, which get their guidance from where? The U.S. For those of you that have been following me for quite some time, you know that I spent the first few years of my military career training to fight a conventional war against Russia. I joined the military in 1985, and the Cold War did not officially end until 1991. We trained to fight a conflict with Russian forces. All of our training was geared around just such an incident. And knowing all along that if it came down to it, and we did have to physically go to war against Russia, that it would eventually become nuclear, and that would end human life on planet Earth. So you can ask anyone that ever served in the military during the Cold War what their feelings were then. And those that were serving when the Cold War ended, what a huge lift off of our shoulders it was to know that the threat of nuclear war was put on the back burner, way back burner, until Biden-Harris came along. And they put us right back into the Cold War with Russia. It is, well, I personally believe it will go down in history as the worst administration to ever be in charge of our nation. And I can only hope and pray tonight that Russia will not follow up on their threats of using nuclear weapons because of this latest red line that Biden has crossed. But I can assure you that from those that my contacts up at the Pentagon and my contacts on the active duty side of the military, as well as the National Guard, are not very pleased right now. In fact, they're downright scared, as they should be, as should you, wondering what in the hell is happening in Washington, D.C. And furthermore, why have those that have the power to step in and do something about this not done so already? I know for a fact that Joe Biden is not in charge of the nuclear football. In the event that a World War III with nuclear weapons was to take place between now and Donald Trump becoming the president, it is not Joe Biden that will make the decision to launch nuclear weapons. No, they've already made it clear that he is incompetent, mentally incompetent. Which brings us back to who is running this country. Who is pulling the strings that we don't see? Who is that person? Many people say, oh, it's Obama. Many people say it's Kamala Harris. I personally don't believe it's either one of them. But yet, I don't know. All I do know is it's not Joe Biden that's running this country. He's only there in name. He's mentally unfit. And here, this administration is pushing us on the verge of nuclear annihilation, and no one at the CIA or the FBI or the U.S. military or the Department of Justice is stepping in to stop this madness? No one. They're just AWOL, absent without leave, sitting back, maybe with their fingers crossed, that nothing is going to go sideways at any moment. If there's anything you've ever been able to take to heart from what's come out of my mouth in the years of doing this show, let it be this. And this is not fear-mongering. This is the truth. And I beg you to ask anyone that you know that served in the military, especially during the Cold War. Today, November 2024, Tuesday the 19th, we are closer to a full-blown nuclear holocaust than at any given time since nuclear weapons were designed. We are on the verge of the end of civilization because of leaders in America, in Russia, in many NATO countries that are incompetent, that can't seem to understand that negotiation should be a top priority. Yet no one is sending anyone to Russia to sit down with Vladimir Putin and his administration to stop this insanity that has taken place in Ukraine and now threatening to just kill us all. Putin is like a wounded animal that's been beaten and beaten and backed into a corner and continuously beaten, and eventually decides, I got nothing else to lose. I'm going to lash out with everything I have, even if it means the death of me, because I can't take this any longer. That is the president of Russia right now. His own administration is begging him on Russia TV to launch nuclear war, launch tactical nuclear weapons against Ukraine to end that. That's the only way they see it ending, because they want to save face. The fact that they've been at this war for all this time and they've lost hundreds of thousands of troops and equipment, that they're now relying on North Korea, who is also a nuclear power now, to supply them with combat troops to continue fighting on the ground. And that is currently happening. North Korea sent equipment, arms, and combat troops that are currently engaged in combat in Russia along the Ukrainian border. This administration saw it coming and did nothing to stop it. No negotiations. Nobody stepped up. What did we see happen under the 4 years of Donald J. Trump? We saw a man who wrote The Art of the Deal. We saw a man who was not afraid to stand up to dictators and meet with them face to face. He scared the shit out of them, which is what kept the peace across the globe. They didn't know how to take this man. They didn't know if he was batshit crazy or bluffing. Think about this for a moment. Donald Trump, when North Korea was saber rattling and talking about how they're going to, now that they got their nuclear weapon designed, trying to find a way to get it onto an intercontinental ballistic missile to strike America, and test firing missile after missile constantly, Donald Trump went to South Korea, to the DMZ, to meet with North Korea's president. They stood towing the line of the DMZ. And one man, the first president in our history to have the balls to step over that line and into North Korea and shake the hand of that dictator, scared the living shit out of him and all of his people, in the world for that matter. Even myself was like, holy shit, look what this guy just did. And it worked. He negotiated with the North Korean leader. You either stand down and you stop this silliness, or we will wipe you off the face of this planet in a matter of minutes. And they stopped. The same thing happened with Iran. You will not be supplying Palestine, Hamas terrorist, Hezbollah terrorist, Taliban, ISIS, with weapons to kill humans anymore, or we will annihilate your ass. And it worked. When Russia was talking about taking back all the countries that separated after the Cold War ended and the walls came down, it was Donald Trump that went to Putin and said, you will not go invade Ukraine under my watch. And then along comes Biden and Harris, who lets North Korea go totally freaking rogue, to the point of even supplying Russia with weapons and troops. Because without somebody helping them, they lose the war. And then Biden-Harris turns to Iran and gives them billions of dollars, billions, which they then turn around and use to support terrorism around the world. And the attack that took place in October on Israel, supplying Hamas and Hezbollah with weapons to kill innocent men, women, and children. And then we watched as Joe Biden did absolutely nothing. No negotiations, nothing to stop the movement of Russia on Ukraine. Nothing. And if all that wasn't bad enough, then we had this debacle of a withdrawal from Afghanistan that was so rushed and so hurried that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris left behind billions of dollars of our U.S. military equipment from armored personnel carriers, helicopters, all types of ammunition and guns, food, water, Humvees, you name it. All of our equipment that was there left it on the battlefield to fall into the hands of terrorists to be used again one day against us. This administration and whoever is behind the scenes that we don't know about are a danger to humanity. Yes, we cannot allow Russia to take Ukraine because they won't stop there. They've already made their intentions clear what they plan to do. But damn it, we can send people there to negotiate with the Ukrainian president, with Putin, and come to some type of an agreement to stop this chaos, which is the same thing that Donald Trump says he will have done before he even swears into office in January. And I have no doubt that as I speak, Donald Trump has a team already talking to those two leaders. We will see when Donald Trump takes office what happens and if he's bluffing or telling the truth to us. The Pentagon has confirmed that Joe Biden has authorized Ukrainians military to use U.S.-provided long-range missiles on targets inside of Russian territory. The weapons will mostly focus on the Kursk region of western Russia. The decision was first reported by the New York Times. According to the Pentagon, Biden's decision was spurred by the Russians' decision to invite 10,000 North Korean soldiers into the fight against Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin has previously said the U.S. approval of such missile strikes would constitute an act of war against Russia. The announcement came after Great Britain and France authorized Ukraine to launch Scalp Storm Shadow missiles, according to the French outlet Lafargue. Biden's announcement also came just hours after Russia concluded one of its largest missile and drone attacks in months, launching over 200 targeted Ukraine power and energy infrastructure attacks. Putin has previously said that giving Ukraine the green light on missiles would efficiently mean that the U.S. and NATO are in the war. Flight assessments of these missile systems can, in fact, only be controlled by U.S. military personnel in NATO. Ukraine service members cannot do this alone. And therefore, it is not a question of allowing the Ukrainian regime to strike Russia with these weapons or not. It is a question of making a decision of whether NATO countries directly participate in the military conflict or not, Putin said. If this decision is made, it will mean nothing less than the direct participation of NATO countries, the United States, and European countries in the war in Ukraine. Meanwhile, President-elect Trump's transition team is expected to soon announce a peace envoy to assist in negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. Trump argued on the campaign trail that he could solve the conflict before entering office. Trump has been rolling out appointing names to those he wanted to fill his cabinets and advise him of top issues at a lightning quick pace. Some adversaries are reportedly encouraging Trump to push Ukraine to agree to terms that would freeze the front lines by creating an 800-mile-long demilitarization zone, just like we have in North Korea and South Korea, allowing Russia to keep the land it illegally seized, which amounts to roughly 20% of Ukraine. It has also been suggested that Ukraine should agree not to pursue NATO membership for at least 20 years. So, because of Biden's decision on these long-range missiles, Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a revised nuclear doctrine today, stating that any attack on Russia supported by a country with nuclear power would be grounds for a nuclear response. Putin signed the new policy on the 1,000th day of the war with Ukraine, and the day after President Biden authorized Ukraine to use United States-supplied long-range missiles to strike inside of Russia. The doctrine also states that Russia could respond to aggression against its allies with nuclear weapons, reported by the Associated Press. Though the doctrine doesn't specify that Russia will definitely respond to such attacks with nuclear weapons, it does mention the uncertainty of scale, time, and place of possible use of nuclear deterrent as key principles of deterrence. When asked if the updated doctrine comes in response to Biden's decision to ease restrictions on how Ukraine can strike Russia, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told AP that the doctrine was published in a timely manner. He said that Putin told the government to update it earlier this year so it's in line with the current situation. The Russian president led a meeting back in September to discuss these proposed revisions to the doctrine. The doctrine also officially states that an attack on Russia by a non-nuclear power with the participation of support of a nuclear power will be seen as a joint attack on the Russian Federation, which is where we're currently at right now. It also contains a broader range of conditions that would trigger the use of nuclear weapons, noting that they could be used in response to an air attack involving ballistic and cruise missiles, aircraft, drones, and other flying vehicles. Previous doctrine threatened the use of Russia's arsenal if reliable information is received about the launch of ballistic missiles targeting the territory of Russia or its allies. And then, good leadership would be out in front of this talking to the American people, explaining to us why these decisions are being made, and basically selling it to us. But that's not happening. Instead, the Pentagon decided today that it would hold a press conference on a wide range of topics. And they didn't bring their best to the press conference. In a situation where we're on the brink of nuclear war, they roll out this incompetent woman. Well, look, I'll just let you watch it along with me and listen to what comes out of her mouth with the questions that are asked.
Dan.
Could you talk about the decision to lift the restrictions on the use of longer range attack on missiles for the Ukrainians, and why was this decision taken when it was, after many months of saying that this was not going to happen? And then also, can you just give us an update of how many missiles have been used by the Ukrainians and roughly what they're targeting?
So Dan, I don't have anything to announce or to confirm at this time. If we have more to share publicly, we will do so. That being said, just taking a step back to, answer kind of broad strokes some of your questions, let's not forget where we are, and that is the fact that Russia chose to escalate this war by introducing DPRK forces into the battlefield and into the fight. And so what we are doing is, as we have been from the very beginning, is ensuring that Ukraine has what it needs. So you're going to see us continue to support Ukraine with different presidential drawdown packages that are going to support its short-term and long-term needs.
Sorry, just on the North Korean troops, roughly how many there are now on the ground around Kursk? And are there indications that North Korea is ready to actually send more troops?
So in the Kursk region, what we approximate is approximately or over 11,000 DPRK troops in the Kursk region. In terms of are more going to be sent, it's certainly a possibility, but that's our initial assessment right now along Kursk. Carla.
Hey, thanks. To follow up, Ukraine fired long-range fires into Russia. Did they violate the policy, or did the U.S. policy change?
Yeah, so Carla, what I'm going to tell you is exactly what I told Dan, is I just don't have anything to announce today, and I don't have anything to confirm at this time.
The policy, did they tell us about it? I mean, did they or did they not violate the policy, or did the policy shift? Officials have told VOA that the policy has changed.
Yep, so Carla, appreciate the question, but again, I just don't have anything to announce or to confirm at this time.
And then I guess I want to ask also, since we're still unclear on whether or not the policy has changed, on the non-nuclear, the change on Russia's stance on the nuclear, the nuclear doctrine.
Sure.
Under these changes, they're saying that a large attack by a non-nuclear state that's backed by a nuclear state, which would be the United States, that would be treated as a joint assault on Russia. How concerning is that to the Pentagon, and have you changed your posture?
So we aren't surprised by Russia's update to its nuclear doctrine. It's something that they've been signaling that they intend to update over the last several weeks. It's the same irresponsible rhetoric that we've seen before and that we've seen, frankly, for the past 2 years. So it's something that we're going to continue to monitor, but we don't have any indications that Russia is preparing to use a nuclear weapon within Ukraine, and we don't see any, we don't see any changes that need to be made to our own nuclear posture as well. Yes.
Well, thank you, Sabrina. According to Associated Press reports, President we've been talking about Ukraine using this U.S.-supplied long-range missiles for deeper strikes into Russia. My question is, what are the ramifications of President Biden escalating the war against Russia in light of the Russia's foreign ministry statement in Associated Press that as was stated, Putin has reaffirmed Moscow's readiness to use nuclear weapons if he sees a threat to its sovereignty and a follow-up?
Well, let me be clear. We're not at war with Russia. And the party here that continues to escalate this war is Russia. By bringing in another foreign country into the battlefield, by bringing in over 11,000 DPRK soldiers into the fight, that is an escalatory action. And you've heard the National Security Advisor say yesterday that this administration told Russia that if they escalated this conflict by deploying DPRK troops, we would help Ukraine respond. Again, the parts of the war that has been escalated upon directly stem from Russia's choice and decision to invade its sovereign neighbor.
Additionally, given the joint U.S. and NATO escalation of attacks with Ukraine against Russia, and with China and North Korea joining Russia to form an alliance against the West, would not you say that World War III has begun?
I would not say that. That is not the characterization that this building assesses. And you've seen us take measures to de-escalate tensions and to, and I'm sorry, I'm just speaking like broadly around the world, but when it comes to Ukraine, the commitment of this administration from the very beginning of this war was to help Ukraine take back its sovereign territory. A decision by another country to invade its sovereign neighbor cannot go unchecked. And that's why you've seen not just the United States, but 50 or so countries all around the world come together and support Ukraine through the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. So this is a global effort to support Ukraine, but I certainly would not characterize it as that. Joseph.
Thanks. Got one on Iraq and then one on Lebanon.
Sure.
The Iraqi Prime Minister.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. Where in the fuck did they get her from? one of the most important press briefings in my lifetime. And they card out, I don't know, was she the press secretary for waste management before she became the press secretary working at the Pentagon? Are you kidding me? She's clueless, had no answers, was unprepared for anything that was coming. And this went on for quite some time. You can go watch the whole damn press conference. It's everywhere. It's all over the internet. It's on YouTube. It's on Rumble. Just pick a place. Here we are on the verge of a nuclear holocaust. And just like what everything else this current administration has done, everything they touch, they break. They're not transparent, although they claim they are. And then they cart out from the Pentagon that clown that you just watched spew. I wouldn't even buy a car from her. I don't know what she's capable of doing. Maybe she can make a sandwich. I don't know. Hell, she might be a nuclear fucking scientist for all I know. But not from that conference, she wasn't. And she's sitting there smiling and laughing like, oh, it's no big deal. And no, we don't see it as World War III. And oh, no, it's Russia that's escalating all this. And so the BBC, which I tune into a lot because for the most part, the BBC, when it talks about shit happening in America, is not biased one way or the other. Unlike if you're watching CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or any of the major networks here in America, the BBC pretty much lays it all out there. Here it is, take it or leave it. But it's the factual information, not leaning one way or the other. And with that, here's this quick report that I'd like you to see.
Just a day after the US finally gave permission for Ukraine to fire American long-range missiles into Russia, Kyiv has done so. Its attack on a target within Russia's recognized territorial borders was confirmed by both Moscow and by officials in Washington. The change in US policy comes at a critical time, with the Biden administration due to give way to that of Donald Trump in January. Moscow says the strike hit the Bryansk region this morning. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that they will react accordingly. Today marks 1,000 days since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And this latest development is being watched very carefully by world leaders at the G20 summit in Brazil. More on that in a moment. But first, our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg has this report from Moscow.
Breaking news on Russian TV. Claims that Ukraine had fired 6 American ATACMS missiles into Russia's Bryansk region, though no reports of casualties. The response from Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, said the missile attack was a signal that the West wants to escalate the conflict. But is this escalation by Russia? Published today, a Kremlin decree lowering the nuclear threshold. Russia now reserving the right to go nuclear, even if attacked by conventional weapons, if such an attack threatens Russia's sovereignty or territorial integrity. President Putin had promised changes to the nuclear doctrine weeks ago, a clear signal to Europe and America not to let Ukraine strike Russia with long-range missiles. Then, an even clearer signal. Russian nuclear exercises, a warning to the West not to cross Russia's red lines. But the key question, in Russia's war on Ukraine, would Vladimir Putin use a nuclear weapon?
I think it's quite serious. because even Putin doesn't know whether he can use nukes or he can't. It depends on his emotions. We know that he's a very emotional man, and the decision to begin this war was also an emotional step.
The lowering of the nuclear threshold does not mean that Vladimir Putin is about to press the nuclear button. These changes are designed, I think, at the very least, to put pressure on Western leaders who will now have to decide, is Putin bluffing or not? Earlier, at the Museum of Victory, the Kremlin kick-started commemorations for next year's 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. Not a word was said here about the 1,000 days of Russia's war in Ukraine. A war which, for the Kremlin, hasn't gone at all to plan, but which it remains determined to win. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Moscow.
Good reporting by the BBC. Again, I want you to, pretty much everybody, know someone, whether it's a family member or a friend of a family member, that served during the Cold War. So I want you to take the time to ask them how they feel about the current situation right now on planet Earth. And I'm 99.999% positive that they're going to share with you the exact same thing that I am. And that is, this administration has put us back in the Cold War with Russia, and we stand a closer chance of nuclear annihilation today than we ever have in the history of nuclear weapons being designed. The Cuban Missile Crisis that took place in the 60s doesn't have shit on this. And all we're doing is pushing that red line farther and farther away. Every time that Putin laid out a red line in the sand and said, if you do this, I will resort to nuclear weapons. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did it. He said, if you give Ukraine M1 battle tanks and NATO gives them their equivalents, that's a red line. So what did we do? We gave them the tanks. If you give them F-16 fighter planes where they can strike into Russia, we will resort to nuclear weapons. What did we do? We gave them F-16s. Every time Putin draws a line, this current administration, along with our NATO allies, crosses it. And then the last red line we're talking about right now is in the event that America and NATO forces are to give Ukraine long-range missiles to where they can strike deep into Russia. That's it. We're resulting in nuclear weapons. So now, do we just continue to call their bluff? According to the Pentagon nimwit that you just listened to, we're nowhere near World War III. We're not in a Cold War. I just want to know who's running this country. It's our country. If you're an American, regardless of your political party, you deserve to know who is making these irresponsible decisions and refusing to negotiate. Do you want to know the answer to that? I sure as hell do. Maybe the time will come that we will have those answers. Or maybe it'll be too late. The president-elect is putting together a team to go meet with the Russian president and the Ukrainian president to stop nuclear Armageddon that this administration is pushing us into. That is batshit crazy. Look, it's one thing to make threats. It's another thing to make threats when you're actually being attacked and there's a freaking war going on. These long-range missiles supplied by America, made by American companies, utilizing American satellites for guidance, all Ukraine's doing is putting in the grid coordinates and pressing a button. The rest of it is done by America to hit the targets. So we are actively engaged in war with Russia, as we have been for quite some time now. And yet, half of this country doesn't give a shit. They just go about living their life day in, day out in their little bubble, not aware of what's happening outside of their little bubble and how crazy this shit is. Now, I get it. Hey, what's the big deal? Donald Trump won. Hey, Biden and Harris are out. We still got till the middle of January for that transition to take place. And if you don't think there's still not an attempt out there to take Donald Trump's life, then you're smoking Hunter Biden crack. Many things can happen between now and then. And this administration is pushing us to that brink. There's plenty of time for stupid shit to happen. And I guarantee you some stupid shit is going to happen soon. All it takes, according to our doctrine, America's with our NATO forces, is for Russia to launch one tactical nuclear weapon, which is the smallest they possibly can, anywhere in Ukraine. And we in NATO will respond with nuclear weapons on Russia. And Russia will then launch all their nuclear weapons on NATO and America. And then our lives are over. Done. Stick a fork in it. That's how fucking dangerous this shit is right now. And nobody is stepping up that has the ability to stop this craziness. It's almost as if they're trying to see how much chaos can we produce before Donald Trump gets sworn in. Let's leave him with the most fucked up thing we possibly can. Not only have we destroyed everything in America, but we've set you up for nuclear annihilation. And I don't think they care if it happens or not. That's how bad they hate Donald Trump and his supporters. That they'd rather see all of us be vaporized off planet Earth than to sit back and watch Donald Trump keep peace in the world for 4 years. Because they have fed you with so much bullshit about the dangers of Trump, comparing him to Hitler, to Stalin, to Osama bin Laden, to the KKK. The list goes on and on and on of all the crap that they fed us that's not true. And now they know what's about to happen. Trump's going to come in and prove to all the liberals and the Democrats that have been fear-mongering all the shit about Donald Trump, he's going to do the same thing he did the first 4 years that he was in office. Keep the fucking peace. Make America great again. Support our law enforcement. Close our border. Go after all these illegals that are committing murder and crimes and drug and sex and human trafficking. And actually go sit down with these world leaders or world dictators and say, we're done with your ass. Do that shit one more time and watch what the fuck happens to you. That's what we need. And it looks like it's going to be not happening until Inauguration Day, which is what, January 20th, I believe. So we got plenty of time for Biden and Harris to get us all killed between now and then. And once again, I say that I'm not putting the blame on Biden, all of it, because I don't think he knows what the fuck's happening. I believe from what I've witnessed over the past 4 years and so have you, the mental decline of this man who can't walk and chew gum at the same time, who rambles on about shit that doesn't make any sense, just like Kamala Harris did. Thankfully, the American people have been watching the same thing that you and I have been watching, which is America became the laughingstock of the world. And enough of them finally stood up and said, we can't do this anymore. And not only did we take back all three branches of government, the Electoral College, but also the popular vote, and damn near turn America solid red. The biggest turning red since Ronald Reagan. And the Democrats and liberals just can't figure it out. Well, thankfully, you and I figured it out. And hopefully, maybe, there is somebody in higher powers at the Pentagon or Department of Justice or the CIA that's going to find out who's pulling Biden's strings and stop that evil bastard from getting us all killed. Because that is the road we're heading down. And this isn't nothing new. For those of you that have been watching this program since Russia invaded Ukraine, I've been reporting on it. I've been telling you how close we're getting to a full-blown nuclear war. And now we're at the point of the only thing we haven't done is physically put American pilots in the F-16s to attack Russia. We just supplied the F-16s. And now we supplied the long-range missiles. And now we're supplying the guidance for the long-range missiles. That's some pretty scary shit. And I hope And I pray that I'm 100% wrong about what's happening. I really do. I hope that Russia doesn't have any plans, that it's only saber rattling. It's only empty threats. But after my conversations in the past 24 hours with my contacts in the Pentagon and in the military and in the National Guard, they're fucking scared tonight. And so should every American. Because this administration, in my personal opinion, does not give a damn about you and me and this country if it means that Donald Trump doesn't get sworn in again. I see absolutely no reason for them not to be sending people over to Russia right now to sit down with Putin and say, what the fuck, over? And getting together with the Ukrainian president too, or with Iran, or with North Korea, or with China for that freaking matter. But we don't see any of that happening, do we? You had many places to be tonight. You chose to be here with me, and for that, I'm forever grateful. I thank you very much. I'll be back on a Thursday night for another show. Hopefully, things won't get worse between now and then, and I'll be able to talk about some of the other things that American patriots need to be aware about, and Americans, that's happening. This administration is going to see to it that everything that can possibly go wrong goes wrong before they're out of office. I really believe that there's some kind of evilness working that we just don't know who they are. But we can only pray that it's going to work out in our interest, just like the election did, and not theirs between now and the time Donald Trump is sworn in. Wherever you're watching me tonight, whether it's on Rumble or LinkedIn or X or YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Tell your family and friends about the Douglas Ducote Show. Have them tune in on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. Central Time. If anything breaks between now and Thursday, I'll do a live show about it, or I'll put a video about it. Other than that, hope you all have a wonderful and blessed night. As always, please say a prayer for our men and women serving in the United States military, our veterans, our law enforcement officers, our first responders, their families, our angel families, our blue and gold star families in our country. May God bless the United States of America, and may God bless each and every one of you. Thank you. God bless you. And I'll see you on Thursday.